So just an overview of what the forum is tonight. Our objective is simply to provide you the information you need to make an educated vote. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of skewed information in the paper, Facebook, whatever. So we feel it's our responsibility not only to get the facts, but to share them with you so that you can make a good vote. We also just wanted to provide an opportunity for you to comment. I mean, this is a big deal, and I think we can all learn from each other's opinions and questions. So that's what we're really after tonight. So the presentation, there's 4 parts of it. It'll take 15 to 20 minutes. This is just the result of our efforts to find the facts about the district itself, the students that go there, the current building issues, as well as what the proposed building looks like, and then finally what the costs and the funding are. So if you'll allow me to just go through all the slides first, so that we can have questions and comments after that. Members of the select board or the town manager, again, may jump in if I miss something in my presentation, but if you can wait until we're done, we appreciate it. I was going to go over ground rules, but this looks like a pretty mellow crowd. But we would like to run this like town meeting. So if you want to have a question, that's fine. If you have a comment, you can keep it to 2 minutes. You can go up to the microphone over there, stand in line if a lot of people want to talk. And if you can direct your questions and comments to me, I will either answer them or ask somebody that has information to answer. All right. So the Whittier district is comprised of 3 cities and 8 towns. This map kind of shows the range of the district. The blue star is where Whittier is actually located on Amesbury Line Road. You can see it stretches from Haverhill all the way down to Ipswich and then east to Salisbury. So the programs that are offered at Whittier for 2023, these are all the programs that are offered. You can see there's a really wide range, everything from childcare to carpentry to welding to hospitality. They've recently added a marine technology program, which they're pretty excited about. In terms of the number of students, they have 1,280 day students, 400 night students, and then they also are participating in a state program. It's called Summer CTI, where the state funds the education of underemployed residents in Massachusetts. So just some background information on the district and the agreement. The district was formed in 1967, and the agreement was part of that. It has not changed much since 1967. The school was constructed, originally paid for by the state. It was opened in 1973, and the agreement has the ongoing operation costs. They're allocated based on the number of students each city and town sends to Whittier, but the capital costs are allocated based on the number of school-age children in your city or town. So that's quite a big difference, and that's a lot of what the questions have been recently about. So that's dictated by the agreement. There's nothing you can do about that. You just have to abide by it. One interesting thing is that if we do not send any students to Whittier, the operational cost, instead of being per student, just becomes per number of school-age children in your town. So a lot of people have talked about, well, why can't we change the agreement? We could, but it's a pretty onerous process to modify the agreement. Either the Whittier School Committee or a petition from 5% of the registered voters in the city or town can submit an amendment. Then the cities and towns would have to vote and approve that. Simple majority in each city and town, but all 11 cities and towns would have to approve that amendment. It's a pretty high bar. I mean, all of those cities and towns would have to feel that it benefited them to make that change. The withdrawal is a type of amendment. The process to get there is a little bit different, but it would originate from either a city council or at a town meeting. So it would come from the town. They would say they wish to withdraw from the agreement. That would have to be voted by the city council or a town meeting. And then the school committee would draft what the terms of that withdrawal would look like. And then those terms would then go back and be voted by the city council for the town meeting. One thing to note, even if we were able to successfully withdraw or any city or town, you would still be liable for any capital costs that were outstanding at the time. So it's not like you can just walk away and leave the cost. If you are part of the district when the cost has occurred, then you still have to pay the cost. So in terms of the municipality involvement in the operations, the school committee consists of 2 members that are appointed by each city and 1 member from each town. And those people are appointed by the school committees. So the Nantucket School Committee appoints a member from West Newbury, from Merrimack, and from Groveland. And there's no provision in the agreement for municipal officials to have any role in this. The school committee members are elected. They're not appointed by the select board. So that's how the agreement is. So that means that we would have to rely on Whittier and the school committee members or the Tucker School Committee to let us know any updates, financial planning needs, long-term capital costs, that kind of thing. So this table here just gives you a little bit more background on the makeup of the district. You can see here the first set of columns are the number of students that are enrolled in Whittier and what percent they are of the district. So this column is what determines the operation cost. You can see West Newbury has 13 students currently, so that's 1% of the total. The second set of columns is the total number of school-age children in each city and town, and that's what determines the capital costs. So West Newbury has 622 students in our town that are school-aged, so that comes out to 3% of the total. So the final column just looks at the difference between those two, and these towns are sorted by that. So you can see West Newbury is 2.1% difference. So we have there's 2.1% more students, school-age students, as a percentage than there are students going to Whittier. The reason that becomes important is if you're Newburyport, there's a 9.3% difference. So, if you're looking at, you send 29 students there, but you have 2,300 students in your district, you're paying a proportionately larger share. And that's compared to Haverhill, who has a negative 26%. So they have 867 students, which is 68% going to Whittier, but as a percentage of school-age children, it's only 42%. So this next slide just looks at student enrollment at Whittier for the last 7 years. You can see the yellow line at the top is Haverhill. They have, of course, by far and away the most students. Everybody else is down clustered in that map at the bottom. But they're all under 60 students. And those boxes really kind of give the detail on that. There's 5 towns and cities that are increasing enrollment over that 7-year period: Amesbury, Georgetown, Haverhill, Rowley, and Salisbury. Ipswich is holding pretty much level. And then the 3 Nantucket towns and Newbury and Newburyport have declined in enrollment over those 7 years. So one other thing to point out is Whittier is a public school. However, there's no guarantee that our students will get in. There is an acceptance process, just like at college. This slide shows the criteria that Whittier.
Does the agreement happen?
So how about if we get through the slides? I think that'll be more effective. I'm happy to go back if you have questions.
pull that back so we can see it better, maybe bigger. Okay, that's great.
Is that helpful?
So much better.
Okay, you can't see that far.
Yeah, thank you.
I was just wondering why we're so far away from the screen.
I don't know. All right, so that kind of sums up the first little piece, which is about the district, the enrollment, and that kind of thing. So we'll move on to discuss the existing building. Okay. So the current building is about 50 years old. It went online in 1973. Like you would expect, the the additional athletic facilities. And this final bullet is an important point. The student enrollment would stay the same. One of the earlier designs had an increased student enrollment, and in an effort to cut back costs, they committed to keeping enrollment the same. So what is this going to cost? The total estimated project cost, and this is the most current as of December 13th, is $444.6 million. The MSBA, which is the State School Building Association, granted Whittier $159.7 million. There's another $15.4 million in state and federal grants, which leaves the 11 cities and towns on the hook for $269.5 million. So this table here was put together by Mayor Reardon in the report as part of his presentation, and it just shows the costs for other vocational schools in the region. Essex Tech was built in 2017. You can see the cost per square foot is only $394. Part of that is because it's 5 years old. But these other three that are currently in the construction, those costs are still quite a bit less per square foot than the proposed cost for Whittier. I think it's also noteworthy that those 4 other vocational schools are based on student enrollment rather than the number of school children. So that would make a big difference to the number of towns and communities. So in terms of what this means for our town as well as the other towns, this shows the cost breakdown. Again, it's based on the number of school-age students in each town and city. You can see West Newbury has to pay the least amount. It's still $16.2 million. So the principal there is that column adds up to the 269, but then we have a significant interest on top of that. So almost half, almost double what the principal is. So our total cost, assuming 4% on short-term bonds and that kind of thing, is $16.2 million. You can see Haverhill is paying the most, at $219.1 million, but that's based on their total student population of 3,400. So this next slide looks at the annual debt service. So what that is that 16.2 million spread over 30 years, which is a typical life of the loan. So West Newbury here, we'd be looking at $540,000. That would be our annual debt service. So this compares that to the number of students that we're sending to Whittier. We send 13 students here. That means we're paying $41,000 per student on our annual debt service. Whereas Newburyport, who, if you remember, had a 9% difference between enrolled and number of total students, they're spending about $70,000 per student to send to Whittier. And Haverhill is spending $8,400 for each student they send to Whittier. But this is just the cost of the building. This is not the operation.
Why is there a decrease in the application rate?
I don't know then. But let's get through the questions and I need to do the slides and you can ask at the end. Okay. So the options for funding these projects, we have 4 options basically. We can either fund it within our tax levy limit. We can fund above our property tax levy limit, which would mean an override. Or a debt exclusion in the form of an override. An override is permanent. Once you increase above your levy limit, you're stuck there. If you do a debt exclusion, it's related to a certain project and it does a finite duration. So if we did this for Whittier, it would be 30 years and then we'd go back to our normal levy limit. We could make budget reductions in the services we currently offer residents, or we could make reductions in what we would like to offer in the future. And then our final option is using free cash or stabilization. I will say of all the towns and cities that we've spoken with, West Newbury is by far in the best financial shape. And I think we have a lot more options for how we would fund this if the vote was successful. Many cities and towns have said flat out they'll have to cut services in order to make this work. They're already at the point where they can't do an override or, so, the situation is pretty dire for a lot of communities. So the next slide just has the text of the vote. I think this is really important, this first sentence. Do you approve of the vote of the regional school district to authorize this debt? The vote is not about whether you're yes for Whittier or no for Whittier. I don't think anybody is no for Whittier. It's not about, do you favor vocational education? Do you think it's important? I mean, it's strictly about if you approve of the school committee vote to authorize this debt. I think the final sentence is also critical that if the costs exceed what are currently proposed, $444.6 million, we're not getting any more money from the MSBA. The member towns and cities are on the hook for anything that if there's unforeseen conditions, the costs are higher, we have to pay for it. So the next slide is just what does a yes vote mean? It's a simple majority on January 23rd between 11 and 7. Everybody who votes in all 11 cities and towns, one vote over the 50%, that's what determines it. So it's different than other elections that we've had. If the vote is successful and yes, then Whittier's authorized to borrow that $444.6 million. And district members will have to figure out how to pay for it. And then, as I mentioned, members will be responsible for any costs over that $444.6 million. If their vote is a no, the Whittier project will lose the current MSBA funding. It's $159.7 million. However, they can redo the project, get input from the towns and communities, and go back. There will probably be a significant time delay, 2, 5, maybe 10 years, but it is possible to go back with a different project and get funding again. And some people have pointed out what happened with Kentucky was originally proposed. There was not a lot of public buy-in to it, so they went back to the drawing board. They did a pretty heavy lobbying effort to engage the towns in Kentucky. And it was successful. We have a beautiful high school. So, alternative projects, perhaps a different renovation scheme would have to be explored. One thing to note also is that Whittier won't be able to spend any money without getting approval from 2/3 of the member cities and towns. So it's been presented that if there's a no vote, we're immediately going to start renovating the building, and that's not what will happen. They will still have to go through the proper channels as dictated by the agreement. So the final slide, because I want to kind of end on a positive note. Really, the point of this is that your vote matters, and small towns still have a say. Jim, our town clerk, gathered this data on 2 kind of comparable elections. All 11 cities and towns voted in the elections. They were held in December and April, not great weather for people to be out and about. And I think what this shows is that, West Newbury was 4% of the total votes in these elections. But if you add up all the cities, all the towns that were less than 10%, that's a total of 46% of the vote of registered voters. So I guess the point is that small towns can have an impact as long as everybody gets out and votes. So that concludes our presentation slides. In terms of the questions, what I would like to do is give both my colleagues, Angus and Jim, and the FinCom, as well as Chip from the Whittier School Committee, the chance to make any comments they would like. You can hold around and make them at the end if you would prefer. Just as a courtesy of any of you would like.
I just reported here.
Okay.
Question. So pretty thorough presentation.
Chip, did you want to? Okay. All right. Finance Committee, any comments? Or would you?
Not
Very good. Okay.
here.
Okay. So in terms of questions, I'd like to have questions first because to me those are I think more important than comments. So if you have questions about anything that was raised or anything that was not said, we don't have the answers, we'll get them for you. So feel free to step up to the microphone. We'll take people in person first and then people online. And then when that's done, we can go back and take comments in the room and then comments online. So if you just state your name and address, so we have that for the record, I'd appreciate it. If you could step up to the microphone so everybody could hear, that'd be great. And people online, if you could do the raise your hand icon, so Jim will know you have a question, that would be helpful.
Hi, Wendy. My name is Jean Pucci. I live on Stewart Street in West Whittier. It's unfortunate that the superintendent couldn't come to address some of these issues, but this is Margaret Lynch. But is there anyone else from the school that could answer some of these?
Chip O'Connor is from the school committee.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now let me get this clear. The percentage of school age children, is that K to 12?
Yes,
It's not 9 to 12.
no, occasionally.
Okay. Did they get more than one bid, construction bid on this particular school project?
Yes, sir. There were 9.
There were 9? Okay,
Just 9 different firms that were.
consulted.
Yeah.
So if I can clarify on that, this type of construction contract is called a construction management at risk. So what that means is they are not bidding on a specific project. They were selected based on their qualifications and their fees. So it's an approved method of construction management. Public entities do have to get approval from the OIG to use that. And it's an alternative method. So there are some risks, but it's believed that in the long term, it can be more cost effective.
Can everybody hear me?
Not well, speak right into the mic.
Go to that.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, is that better? Okay, I have another question. Does Whittier accept students from outside the district? Have they ever had kids come to Whittier that's outside this 11-town district?
They have, I would say, at least last handful of years, there haven't been the attendance from the city house.
I can't hear you, maybe you need to come up.
And also those who are on the Zoom aren't gonna be able to hear. So
Yeah, you can share this with me.
Will they be able to hear these mics?
Yeah.
So it does happen on occasion, but because the attendance from all the participating towns has reached the limit, so in other words, if there's not enough people from within the participating towns, fill out the capacity, the role, but there hasn't been any in the last couple of years.
Okay, because I just learned that only 25% of the kids in Kentucky can apply, got in last year, right? So from West Newbury, I'm sorry. But you have in the past. Do you allow like teachers to have their kids come to the school if they don't live in the district?
That I don't know.
Okay,
I'm not aware. I think they have to follow criteria.
okay. And why is it that of the school population, 1,280 approximately, 2/3 of the students come from Haverhill? What's the Haverhill kids have that our kids don't have? 867 students from Haverhill went last year. That's 2/3 of Whittier's school population.
So I'm not sure that's a question that Chip can answer on the school committee. That's an admissions issue that I think,
Well, but they should have somebody for admissions because,
yeah.
you know, I'm trying to figure this whole thing out.
Yeah.
You know, like the superintendent would have been nice for her to come,
Right.
or the principal, or the assistant principal. But, so you can't answer that?
I mean, I would say it's based on the criteria. I think my guess would be, and that's my official answer, is that it's the size of the table, comparison to other cities and towns.
Now, is it because you get like a federal credit from a kid from Haverhill that might come from a more disadvantaged federally? Okay, all
If you
right. Just
can
wanted to-
address your questions to me, so I don't want you to be.
Okay, well, anyway, I want to know why 2/3 of the kids
Okay,
come from Haverhill. I know that's a very large city out of 11 communities.
so that's something that I can follow up. with.
Okay, that seems a little disproportional to me.
Okay,
Okay. And, the other thing is, do you know if, I heard, that $2 million, was spent on AstroTurf at Whittier, recently. Can anybody verify that?
yeah, that was shown in the slide, it was 1.6 million and 1.7 million on fields.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot considering it's not a very big school. You know, you might think that would go more towards really needed repairs, like, but anyway.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So my recollection, and I have to get back to everybody in this one, my recollection, there were significant grants that went to the building of that. So it wasn't coming out of the operating budget. That's my recollection.
But 1.7 did come on the capital. Yeah.
Actually, I think the way that was presented in Whittier material, if I remember correctly, is that, COVID actually caused, because of COVID, they didn't use their sports budget. And I think, I recall from some of the materials that were available to us that a substantial amount of that funding actually would otherwise have been used in the operating budget for the sports programs. So it was budgeted money, money that had been approved and budgeted. And see, as the programs weren't happening and the field needed to be fixed, they put it into the fields.
So,
That's my understanding.
okay, thank you. So we have a member of our school committee that is on the board at Whittier, is that right?
No,
So-
the Kentucky School Committee appoints Chip to be on the Whittier School Committee, it's separate to the one.
Okay, and can you actually, you have some voting privileges or something as representing the town?
Yes, each member gets one vote.
Okay. Okay, well, it's nice to have some representation. Okay, thank you.
Gillian Knowles from Chase Street in here. I would like to ask you to put up the slide on the Western Newbury kids' applications versus their acceptance, because some people, we heard you say that it had gone down in the last few years, which it hasn't. The application's gone up, right?
Right, the acceptance rate went down. So.
Okay, yes, okay. So the acceptance rate went down, the applications went up, right?
Yeah, so I think you might be,
It
referring
was
to.
just to make it clear, there was someone
Yeah.
near me who got it around the other way.
So the prior slide talked about enrollment, which is all, like all West Newbury students, all 4 grades. This
Right.
just refers to freshmen being accepted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So given that, and we don't know why only 4 of the 12 kids who applied, this school year, didn't get in. But my question is it absolutely set in stone that Whittier can't expand its school population? Is that absolutely required? That seems really foolish. You're going to put this money in. You've got kids wanting to go. It's an excellent way to make your way through life without having to take a college degree, but get an excellent education in fields that are really lacking. Anyhow, that's my question. Is it absolutely set in stone that that agreement to cut costs was to keep the student enrollment exactly the same?
That was a choice that was made as part of the application to the NSBA. I mean, the cost would have been higher if it was designed for more.
Yes,
students.
but more sensible, right? I would think. You know, we want more kids being able to take advantage of this really good school.
Yeah, Chris, do you?
Yeah.
do you have some- Things to figure out.
Anyways, what Whittier told us at the time was their original inquiry of the MSBA was that we could build a larger school. The MSBA said that they were not contributing to the funding for that. So that's why I went back to 1280 to get some of the maximum compensation to the state.
So we should go after the MSBA, that is. Right, to me, the focus actually of this whole thing so far has been on cost to us. Which I think we should not be blinded by. We should be concerned about the future of our kids. And that seems like a blind, silly thing.
Other piece of information, I think across the state and across the country, that the number of number of students is going down. So I don't know if that's a factor or not.
Hi. Mike Irving, Coffin Street. Thanks for doing this. I have been under the belief that in a no vote, there actually would be renovations happening right away. So I was hoping for a little more clarification on the no vote point. Like what exactly happens in terms of capital expenditure? Is that a vote by the town or a vote by the school committee to further authorize that? Going that bit more.
Sure, so we did clarify that with the superintendent Whittier, the business manager today. A no vote means that this approval to borrow $444.6 million is denied. So it would be up to Whittier whether they would propose renovation or look at some other building project. But before they can spend any money, you know, their annual budget, both capital and operational, has to be approved by 2/3 of the member of cities and towns every single year. So they couldn't spend, you know, $300 million without getting approval from the member cities.
And is that via the, like, FinCom or some board or vote of the town?
Town meeting for a town and the city council for a city.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I'm John Camp from River Road. So I know we've been talking a lot about capital costs. One of my questions is around operational costs for new buildings. So I don't know if we know kind of the information, but are they planning on this building be certified at what level? And what are they planning to do for renewables? You know, there's all kinds of incentives for geothermal these days, and it seems like a great opportunity if they have a brand new building to put a lot of PV solar, other things like that, solar carports, there's all kinds of things that they could hopefully cut some operating costs.
Maybe grant opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you speak to that? Sure.
I mean, is there a place to go to get this info? Because I found there are, there's very minimal information on the website, and there's some video which doesn't really have a lot of information. So I get it that the inflation and cost to build buildings has gone up dramatically just over the last few years. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. You're gonna start to see $400, $500, $600 million school projects. I remember years back, like there was a big construction project in Newton, Mass, and it was like $100 million school. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's the most expensive school ever. I mean, that's just the norm these days. This would be the norm, but it just seems like for that much money, there's not a lot of transparency in terms of what they're actually proposing. I mean, I haven't seen data.
I did see mention of geothermal, and I was looking through the document.
So I apologize, I don't recall specifics because there's been a lot of material that we've seen in the last couple of months. But an energy efficient structure and the capacity to produce some of their own energy through renewables was sort of a baseline in the building. So the new AU building, as currently envisioned, would be very energy efficient. And there was there was, I'll say the highest, my recollection, what I read was at the highest level that they could have achieved, they concluded they couldn't do from a cost standpoint. And that would have involved a considerable amount of solar, or probably not enough for all of their energy needs, but a significant amount of solar. And I think the building would have been close to, if not actually at net zero design.
I mean, there's like,
But I think at this point, where they are is something below that, but it's still a very energy efficient structure. So, I mean, it would be ideal if it was net zero.
there's like a certification called LEED, and you can just.
Yeah.
And patent, LEED, gold, and silver.
Yeah, understood, yeah, and I don't recall the lead level, for instance, the Kentucky school was a lead silver, they were hoping to get lead gold, but they didn't, but I'll say that I think this is at least lead silver, and it may be higher than that, but there are other standards now too, besides lead. I mean, lead's been around for a bunch of years, and then there are other based on energy codes. There are other considerations now, and the way.
Like this, there's a stretch code and behavioral. Anyway, I think I got, skipped.
Yeah, we will follow up and try to get some more information. I have your email, I'll forward it to you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. How about if we take somebody that's waiting online, Jim? Okay, unmute him. Ian?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, let us just turn it up a little bit, okay?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate it. Ian James, 128 Georgetown Road. So I had a question about the renovation costs. So you presented a slide where you had, I think, 3 different estimates for renovation to code. I just want to make sure I'm interpreting that slide correctly. So the first column was, I think, some Massachusetts independent body that estimated it at 160, and then the other 2 were private companies, I think a construction management company and an actual construction company. Is that correct, that there was such a difference in estimation, like 2x, more than 2x between how much it would cost to renovate the school up to code?
No, so the first column was what was submitted to the MSBA as part of the original.
Got it. Okay.
And that was actually prepared by Left Field, which is the firm that's in the middle column.
Gotcha. Okay. Excellent.
I guess that's why we wanted to highlight that, because we're not clear on why the cost by the construction managers are so much higher. I don't know.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
That's curious.
Yeah.
Is it possible that it's based on timing? When they put in the MSDA application, I'm not sure how long ago.
Yeah, it was March, but there's a contingency built in, 56%.
Gotcha.
So, does that answer your question again?
Yeah, so just to be clear, so the first column is what they submitted for, and the and you said Left Field actually helped them
They actually
fill out that application?
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so why would there be such a difference, I guess?
Yeah, it's curious and concerning, so.
Yeah, because my final question is I just want to be sure, because I do agree the website was pretty sparse on details and transparency in the full amount that they're asking. But Left Field and Consigli would be the people managing the new build, correct?
Consigli is the construction manager, Left Field for the feasibility study.
Perfect. Gotcha. So they would have a role in the new build, just to, for people to think about like incentives and stuff, and for myself as well. I just wanted to clarify that. Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Kevin?
Hi, Kevin Bowe, Maple Street. Boy, he definitely asked one of the questions I was going to ask. So in 6 months, basically Left Field, from March 2nd to September, in 6 months, they submitted like 2 different worlds. Okay, clarify. On the master agreement from the 67, are there minimum seats back to admissions? I mean, usually I'm familiar with a lot of regional co-tech agreements, and there's usually minimum guarantees for all the communities.
Yeah, it's not specified in the agreement.
And I guess, again, related to this and a comment that Chris made, Was it 169 that the building authority is contributing?
159.
150, yeah, okay, so that's like 37% of the, total, which is an odd number. Usually I thought that it was 50%, I think that's what was up in Kentucky. Is there a ceiling for what this mass building authority does? Why a strange number like that? Is there a ceiling that we hit and that's the most they do?
Well, I don't think it's based on a number, it's based, they don't cover everything. So I remember I was on the building committee for Kentucky, and they don't cover all costs. So that could be what happened here,
Because Chris had mentioned, just to clarify, that if they had expanded the building to, 1,600, the building authority wouldn't cover that. And why was that? Because it was too expensive.
I think that it's up there. Larger school.
What was that?
The cost of the higher bid, I think MSBA said the cost of the schools is too great, so
Okay,
they pushed the schools to go with the lower cost.
okay, so the school wanted to go bigger, and the building
There are a
authority.
couple of different options.
This is about as high as we go. And again,
I don't want to interrupt, but just briefly, a couple of things that have been mentioned in meetings we've been at as so-called non-participating costs, which MSBA does not reimburse. Two things that come to mind are demolition and athletic fields. So those are two examples of costs in this project that would be 100% funded locally, just for example.
thank you.
And Kevin, I mean, that if you have a question, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Anybody else online, Jim? No? Okay.
Hi, my name is Ross Kennedy, board of transport. I understand that the issue at hand is yes or no on this $400 million request to raise that funding. And I don't want to muddy the water with issues or suggestions that would need to be handled in a separate process, but it does seem like the regional agreement is deeply flawed. I kind of alluded to that at the beginning. We essentially said that all 12 towns, cities and towns would need to approve of an amendment, right? So why would April prove that if they're getting a free ride on 20% of their costs? It seems really odd that towns would pay a percentage of the cost, but not be entitled to a percentage of the enrollment, in the same proportion. If we are paying 3% of the costs and they're paying 40% of the costs, why would they be allowed to have 60% of the enrollment and we submit 12 students and only 4 get accepted? It doesn't seem right. So, amending the regional agreement, I'm sure that would be a very complicated process, but I wonder if, either this new construction or even on the maintenance side, those wouldn't be two opportunities for the smaller towns to band together and apply some leverage to Haverhill. Hey, we'll go along with some of these investments if we can adjust the agreement either to put in proportion that's due to each town or to go to an enrollment basis. Like you said, that other towns do, because otherwise there is no leverage and it's really not that.
Dave Baker. So in the last slide, you stated the capital expenses are 2/3 vote by the community, is that correct?
Yes.
And this vote is going to be a majority of the members or the constituents of the town, is that correct?
Of all combined
All combined.
constituencies, yeah.
So this project isn't considered a capital expense?
This is not a town meeting vote, is that what you are referring to?
Well, you said capital expenses would be a 2/3 vote.
So the vote is to authorize borrowing, right? So, yeah, it's not to pay the bill, it's just to authorize the borrowing.
Can you clarify that one?
I'm not sure how to, yeah, right.
There's been a lot of discussion and concern about this exact point among the region, is that the vote on January 23rd is to authorize the district to incur the debt. It's not to, for each city and town to raise and appropriate the funds to pay the debt. So that's been some of the concern or criticism, is that it's a vote to approve the project, but not actually to fund the project. Once the borrowing is authorized, the communities are responsible to fund the project, but it's not the normal legislative process through town meeting or city council to actually appropriate funds through the budget. That still has to happen separately. And as Wendy pointed out in the slides, in some towns, that can be accomplished within the existing levy limit. In some towns, they would require a Prop 2.5 override. That's a very different circumstance. So
So,
it's incurring the cost, but it's not paying the bill. It doesn't make sense. I think.
But I mean, a typical town meeting vote, if we're approving our share of capital costs, or some share with the school, we're actually, we're approving funding at that point. We're so it's a completely different type of vote. If we were approving something that required us to borrow money, it would be 2/3 vote. If we were approving something where we were taking money out of an existing stabilization fund, it would require a 2/3 vote. So that's what a normal capital expenditure for Whittier would be a 2/3 vote.
so for this, we're gonna see a simple majority of all the members of the district to approve project. And then we're likely to see a second vote, what will be a 2/3 majority to actually pay for
It depends how we choose to fund it.
So just for example, so when the first year of debt service came due, that would be included in the Whittier operating budget that's sent to all 11 cities and towns. Each of those cities and towns legislative bodies here in West Cambridge town meeting has to approve the budget. In order for the Whittier operating budget to pass, 2/3 of the cities and towns have to approve it. So in the event that the district incurred costs and the operating budget did not pass, that triggers a whole set of processes under code mass regulations, where they actually would have to, there are certain timeframes within which the district would have to present a new budget. And if it goes past July 1st, the start of the fiscal year, they would be required to do a 1/12 budget and basically fund month to month. It gets very, very messy if a regional budget doesn't pass, but that is a contingency that is theoretically possible.
Jason.
Jason? If you can unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Darcy and Jason Spalding of Hilltop Circle. I guess what we're really trying to understand is what we see as a very large cost project, and one I haven't been able to find online where it's really explained in detail, like the breakdown of the cost. I know when the vote happened for Pentucket, there was a lot of community involvement and engagement. So I just haven't seen that on the website. And then I don't understand the bidding process. I understand there was 9 bids, but I don't understand if it was for, like if we were looking all at the same plan and making a bid on it, or if there was, like if it was the lowest cost was chosen, a middle cost. I think that we probably have the same concern as a lot of the community as why does this cost $448 million or $444 million?
Yeah. So this type of contract is called construction manager at risk, and it's based on the qualifications of the firm. It's not about a specific project. It's just based on the firm's experience, what other similar, building projects they might have worked on, as well as what their fee schedule is. So it's not like an RFP. It's called an RFQ. It's a qualifications-based selection. So once that construction manager is chosen, then, part of why there's, a perceived or assumed benefit to this is they can advise while the project's being designed. They know enough about construction that they can offer input along the way. So some other, things to know about this kind of contract, as I mentioned, it has to be approved by the, OIG's office. They would come up with a guaranteed maximum price. And that's negotiated based on known conditions. So this $444.6 million, if it turns out there was ledge for some reason or some unknown condition, that guaranteed maximum price is no longer guaranteed and it could go up. One other thing is that this kind of contract requires that there's an owner's project manager. So there is somebody that's working for the owner to make sure that the construction manager is doing their job. So that's a part, but that also gets added on to the total cost of the project. So does that answer your question?
That answers like the bid part, but I guess like where do we find information on the breakdown of the cost of the school? Like, we understood a lot. I think that the community did a really good job for the Pentucket Regional School of understanding kind of a cost breakdown and why it was costing $146 million. I don't understand why this school costs $444.6 million, and I don't know where to get that information.
So we can find that information and share what we find with you. Do you have the last name there?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll share with you what we can find.
And this is for everybody listening. We are going to be posting the slides that were presented tonight on the front page of the town's website. That'll be up tomorrow. So if you're subscribed to announcements, you get an email, but you can just check the homepage tomorrow. And any new information that we receive or generate in the next week leading up to the election, we'll put on the homepage and try to make it as easy to find as possible.
Secretary DeNaro, Main Street, a simple question. What percentage of Whittier graduates go to college versus go into the trades? Do you know that?
Don't know offhand, I've been asked this question before. My understanding is from a state perspective, I think there are certain requirements as far as those that go into the trades, and I want to be careful on how I term trades, because people hear trades and they think construction, plumbing, electricity, but there's a whole host of other vocations at the vocational school. And I don't have our numbers, which I can track down, but it's around 80% that go into it.
Thank you.
So I asked that during the floor and I'm still doing. So you should clarify that.
Excuse me, 1 second. You said 30? And Kevin, you have figures for the state level?
Yeah, that's even 35.
Yeah, so.
But then Chip is right, though. Some go to like community college, which the trade might.
Yeah.
Yeah, 35.
Direct complex question.
It is.
Steve Pucci, Stewart Street. Next week is to approve the 444. But it isn't allocate that. Because the money in the end could be significantly higher. We don't know that. It seems like a bridge to cross to say to a construction company, okay, they allocated 444, but if it's 580, they have to pay. They have to pay. It seems like a one-sided contract to me. Yes, I can understand they could run into issues when they do it. To me, it seems like a risk to hope for the best, hope it comes in. Whatever it comes in, I have to pay anything. Seems like a bad structure to me, I don't know.
Yeah, Elisa? Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, first, thank you very much for doing this. This is a very educational. I've tried to follow it. There has been a deficit of information and a maybe deficit of transparency. I have a couple of questions, maybe three. First, our share is based on our student population. If our student population changes, does our share of responsibility for capital cost for this new school change, or is it set at the time the debt is incurred to build the new school?
Yeah, so is it a 5-year loan? I mean, it's not recalculated every year. Okay. Yeah, so Angus just handed me information that, so yes, it does change every year, but it's held pretty steady for the past, well, since FY14 at about, 3.5%, 3.2, 3.1.
Okay. Next question. We, I think very wisely, had a fairly long lead up for the Pentucket school building, and the town set up a school stabilization fund for that. I know that there's no Whittier school stabilization fund, but does the stabilization fund for school building that we have in any way help us through this?
So our school stabilization fund could be used for Whittier, but we're currently using it for Pentucket. So that's a decision we'll have to make, and, potentially look at allocating additional money, to the stabilization fund through town meeting vote.
Last question. I'm was sort of struggling, and I still am, with the mechanisms for accountability vis-a-vis West Newbury and other towns and the school administration. I understand we have one member of the Whittier School Committee. We obviously have the vote on January 23rd, and then we have the vote whether to fund ultimately. Is there any other vehicle we have to try to get better communication from the Whittier people as to what they're doing?
There's no formal mechanism, but I think there's a guarantee that every one of the 11 towns and cities will, be demanding information from both the school committee, locally, as well as the Whittier School Committee going forward. I mean, clearly that would have been a lot better approach to engage everybody, well ahead of this, and I think Chip would agree with that. So no formal mechanism, but everybody is geared up to, change that going forward, whether it's in the agreement or not.
Thank you.
Yeah, Angus just made the point, regardless of whether the vote is successful or turned down, and the same thing will happen. We need to be more engaged and find a way to have our voices heard.
That was on it from the tribe. I just, on this slide, I just had a question on the column MSBA PSR footnote says that there's 56% contingency applied. So does that mean the original estimate there was $110 million and it's grossed up 165 based on 56%?
Yes, the preferred schematic report, it was a 1,000-page document, looked at all kinds of scenarios. And so all of the costs in that, other than the access road, were unburdened. So they didn't have any contingency or design or engineering costs. So what I did was took the burden associated with the new access road as a percentage and applied that to everything else. And so this is an estimate, but it's based on what was submitted to the MSBA.
And lost you in the so what is the 56%?
So in that, all that documentation, the new access road was listed as one item, and for some reason they provided a burden for that cost, which is the design contingency and the engineering costs, and that was 56%. So their burden cost for the access road was that number there. So I just took the same percentage and applied it to the wastewater treatment plant and the sprinkler system, which for some reason they didn't attach a burden to in the documentation.
I still don't understand, but that's okay. Maybe catch that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yara? Yeah, do you still have a question? I'm glad you go out here.
Sorry, I was trying to go on off mute. I was pressing all buttons and it doesn't work. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I was wondering, could you bring up the slide where it showed the feasibility evaluation that was spent? It looked like 1.7 million or something like that.
Yeah, is the capital, no, it's, I think slide 9 maybe. Yeah, oh, capital, right there. That's
I
the
actually
one?
I don't see it. All I see is the people. I don't know if I'm on the wrong screen here or what. Here we go. It's coming.
Yeah,
No, yeah, the MSBA feasibility study. So that 1.5 million, was that already spent to figure out what the cost would be for this school? And was it provided to Consigli and left field?
yes, so left field performed the feasibility study. There's also an architect involved. And yes, that was provided to Consigli as part of the bid process.
So that feasibility study should theoretically have completed subsurface investigations to understand whether or not ledge, as an example that you provided before, would be an issue, so that they would be reduce all these unknown scenarios, correct?
I have not waded through all of the documentation. If you go to the Bucket Building page on their website, you can look at all this documentation, you know, including the feasibility study, all the submittals to MSBA. I didn't review it to see if they, you know, determine whether ledge. I just bring that up because it happened with Pentucket, and so that's fresh in my mind as a, you know, potential change order.
Right, so that's why I'm wondering, like, this 440 some odd million school, if we haven't done any subsurface investigations to understand that. I mean, we had sinkholes and everything else under the Pentucket school, so there were some pretty significant issues there that we had to overcome in the design process and the costing for the school. So I'm hoping that all of that was completed, and if we don't know, we should find that out, because this $440 million could be a significant overkill or underestimated.
Right.
And then could you go to the comparison for the other VOTEC schools slide, please?
Yes. Right. This one?
It was a table summarizing the cost that was spent for recent schools.
Yeah.
So this one I'm struggling with a little bit. I don't understand how we came up with $445 million for Whittier Tech when there's another school under construction for 317, 300 million, and 286 with much lower costs per square foot. And I'm just similar to Darcy and Jason, I'm trying to understand what goes into this Whittier Tech school, because it's a pretty significant cost. It's one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive school project in the state. So do we have an understanding of what's going into this 445 million? Because there's been no communication with regards to this until the last couple of months, and it's kind of like a surprise vote on like January 23rd.
Right, yeah, we don't have that breakdown, but that's something that we will try to get a handle on and share with everybody.
So I guess then that begs the question, is this $445 million school negotiable? Because I see a $317 million school, $300 million school, and a $286 million school. Why do we have to spend $445 million for a brand new school that 13 of our kids from West Newbury go to? And it looks like we submit applications and we're being denied. It just doesn't seem like everybody else is commenting on. It's like the elephant in the room. It just doesn't seem like it's been appropriated the right way.
Yeah. So I guess to answer the question in there, at this point, there's no revising the design or the cost or anything. If you are not in favor of it, you would have to vote no, and if the vote was, negative, then Whittier would have to go back to the drawing board.
Just a comment, one of the points that Whittier, again, in a document that is lost in my mind, which document it was, given all that we looked at in the last couple of months. They made reference to the PPI, producer price index. And I think over the last 3 years, the combined PPI is something like 25%. So, typically we as, as we're viewed as consumers. I'm not sure it's a great thing to be thought of as, but typically we talk about the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. The PPI is the increase in costs seen by producers of goods and materials. And, this building of a new school is looking at the PPI is probably more appropriate. It's something in the range of 25% over, I think, the last 3 years. So that's certainly, I'm not saying that justifies any specific number in terms of cost increase, but it's, one school is under construction, when things were actually committed to, when the bids were accepted, was probably at least 3 years ago. And you can, I think you can safely account for some portion of the additional cost of Whittier to that very high PPI over the last few years.
Yep, and I understand that part of it and totally makes sense, but that's a pretty significant increase from what I'm seeing for, I don't know, are these schools comparable in size?
I don't have the square footage up there. I mean, I can follow up and share that with you. I could look at that to calculate the cost per square foot. So I'll make a note and share that with you.
And just one other thing I'd like to point out, like if I remember correctly, there was a need to spend additional money to fund the operations and teachers for the Pentucket Regional School District, middle high school, and that got voted down, if I remember correctly. So and I agree with what someone else said earlier. We've got to make it about the kids and try to get them to go. But if we can't even fund an operational program for our current school that's brand new, how are we justifying paying for Whittier where 13 of our kids are supposed to go to?
Thank you, Jared.
A couple of points. I have the same concerns about the cost of the construction of this project. It was pointed out to us, this is the largest high school to be built in Massachusetts, and the third largest as far as dollars, and the third most expensive in the country. That in itself is disturbing. To put it in perspective, Pentucket, which was just completed a year ago, $148 million for a facility that educates the same rough number of students, 1,200 and change. At a meeting we had with the superintendent of Whittier, and the cost of the main company, I inquired the same question you just asked. He broke out the number for the building itself. He had all the demolition, the site costs, the septic plant, all those things. I believe he said it was 154 million. So my question was, where's the other 300 million in costs? And I never received an explanation for that. And that to me is very concerning. I mean, both tech schools do have, versus traditional schools, significant infrastructure needs within the facilities for their programs. That would account for some. $300 million is a staggering number that I can't grasp. It was not explained as to where that.
Brad Busher, 347 Main Street.
I have a few questions. How many students are not accepted at Whittier Tech annually? How many kids apply? Not.
Total number? I mean, from all cities and towns? I don't know the answer to that.
Does anybody know the answer?
I don't know if that number's up, man, but there's, significant number of people who don't get it. A lot of applicants.
Hundreds, yeah. So we're not designing the school to meet demand.
It was decided not to build a large school.
So we're not designing a school that meets the demand for vocational education in our communities. We're not.
I don't think it's that simple. I think also that the number of enrollment going down is going down across the United States. Doctor.
I mean, I know Greater Lawrence Voc has hundreds of kids waiting to get in. Hundreds, and I would assume hundreds of kids who might get vocational instruction here in our community. What is my second question is, how many kids at Whittier go on to a four-year college? We don't know how many kids are going there. Oh, they're not going there for vocational instruction, they're going there for pre-college.
Yeah, Brad, I'll confirm this, but I believe Superintendent Lynch said at 25%. Do you recall from our meeting? Yeah, I'll confirm that. That's what's something in
My understanding is Andover's high school project, the budget estimate came in at 450 million. 1,700 students. Just sharing that information with people to check the cost of the school construction.
here.
So,
This is the high school, not
Yeah.
the vocational.
yeah. There's like we're turning down. My other question is, how many kids from the Kentucky School District attend Essex Tech?
It's at 4 in the current budget year. It's fluctuated between 2 and 4 in the 5 years I've been here.
From the Kentucky School?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Westinghouse. Yeah.
And then I guess my last question is there's a lot of like people questioning the contractor at risk method versus the design bid build method. And I mean, I would just encourage, the client with respect to that process. I've seen it playing out in other municipalities where the traditional design bid build method doesn't necessarily work. And additional costs are spend it.
Yeah, it's becoming more,
Much more cost.
yeah, so the Kentucky, project was a, construction manager of this project. Paul Kelly? Paul, did you have a question? I'm going to take the next.
He's on.
Oh,
Yeah, mute.
Paul, go ahead.
Is that,
Here.
Paul, did
oh,
you
I
have-
have, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Back in the day, the Haverhill trash to cash incinerator required a certain number of tons of trash from each town. Then recycling came in and the amount of trash fell below the amount required. The incinerator authority tried to require the towns to pay money. And my understanding is that did not happen. So I would like to know if that agreement with the incinerator people was modified. And therefore, could we modify the agreement with the authority, the Haverhill Regional Technical High School People Authority?
I'm not familiar with the incineration contract, but there is a mechanism to modify the Whittier regional agreement. It was described earlier, it requires approval of all 11 member cities and towns. But there is a mechanism.
So that would require Haverhill to agree too, right?
Exactly.
That's too bad.
Okay. Right.
Thank you, Wendy, Angus, and Les, Select Board. I have a question that I think will help us as voters make a salient decision next week in polls. Can you estimate if we took out that 16 million of West Newbury's portion of the debt and did a standard debt service, what impact that would have on the average or the median taxpayer in West Newbury, like on an annual basis for the next 30+ years? Do you have a number that we could share and we can kick around in our heads?
Yeah, so I do have a number. I will also say that on the Kentucky building site, they have a tax calculator that you can put your information in. I'm sorry, Whittier. So it's right now they're estimating $33 per 100,000 assessed value. So for an average $815,000 home, it would be $274 a year.
Thank you, very useful.
I can't see the name. Kate, go ahead. You're muted.
Is that okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I just wonder when we talk about these large projects, whether there is any concern for like approaching net zero in design. And I don't hear anything about that in the Whittier proposal. And I just really, we are facing, major climate change and also educational, challenges to make sure that our kids know how to construct, build, energize, and wire progressive structures. And it just doesn't even seem to be on the table. So why isn't this like the shining example of a net zero, new project? And I could get so behind that if this was like something really progressive and imaginative and important. I think there was an earlier caller from River Road who expressed something similar. But this just seems to me to be the same old. And yeah, if you need a plumber, let's have a place where you can call to get a kid from high school who has a plumbing degree, but let's do better than that. So my thoughts. Thank you.
So it may be that is part of it. Once we get the cost breakdown, we can share that. Rick, the select board member, said that he believed that it is part of the proposal. So we'll get to the bottom of it and share it with you. Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So the prior discussion is that we believe that it is part of the proposal. It's just not broken out. So we will review the information that's provided and identify what energy efficient methods are being incorporated into the building and share that.
Yeah, it should be not only part of the building, but part of the curriculum. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Are you, each of you have already asked a question, right?
Yes.
Okay, let me take the people online that haven't, and then, okay, all right, go ahead.
Gillian Knowles again. This may be sort of an odd question, but what does $/SF mean?
It means dollars per square foot.
Per square. Okay, cool. So it seems as if I had another question that sort of has gotten answered as I stood in line, but trying to compare these numbers with each other when we have very little information about the number of students, and, you know, as I think it was Rick said, the whole idea of the PPI, 2017 was eons ago with regard to cost. You know, so comparing the 133 million with the 425 million is sort of foolish. I just think there's a lot of mud and stuff going there that's unnecessary. It sounds as if the cost of this Whittier project is not unreasonable, given that it's 2024, right? And the other question is, that's sort of a question, is which of those two construction guys ended up with the project?
So left field is the feasibility study engineer. They did the 1.5 million. Yeah, so Consigli is the construction manager.
He's the guy.
And it's two separate.
He's gonna do it.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good.
Greg? I don't see one.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just had a simple question. My understanding of the presentation was there seems to be a binary choice. If the requisite number of towns disapproves the vote, then is it mandatory that the changes, the upgrades to the school get made and it has to be brought to code?
That's how
Or
it's
is
been.
what is the choice that we're asked to make here?
You're being asked to vote yes to approve the vote of the Whittier School Committee to fund this project, or no, you don't approve of the project.
Right, so if we say no, is the consequence that the decision is made for us and they upgrade the school to code? Is that the?
No, that's how it's been presented, but that's not actually the choice. If the vote is no, Whittier has to decide whether they want to renovate, whether they want to try to revise the project, whether they want to engage the communities in a much more robust manner. And whenever they make the decision, then they'll have to come and get approval by 2/3 of the communities for whatever they do next.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm getting a strong feeling that it's not a good thing to approve. And a vote forces them to do their job properly.
I don't know what to say.
I think that's the answer, because you're not going to say that's not the answer.
Okay. Thank you.
David, Wilson, Ruby. Could you bring up the slide that has a limited breakdown of what the costs were?
By town or
By the project, what the money's being spent on. I believe there were 4 different items broken out.
So the MSBA portion and.
It was, I want to say the sprinkler, yeah.
Oh, no, so this is the renovation, this is not for the project. This is, it's a building, no, this is if the building is gonna be renovated, these are their estimates.
I see.
Right.
I don't know,
I gotta speak right in.
Okay, so I just have a couple questions. To me, it seems like there's a real lack of information for them, and yet it really is fitting, which is concerning, given that these issues were raised around 2022. So it's been a fair bit of fun. So I'm not quite sure how Whittier now. Secondly, Whittier is a 50-plus-year-old structure. When I attended the meetings for Pentucket, which I supported, One of the big arguments was, that it's a 50-year-old building, and that our kids need a better structure. I would have to say that that might be the case over here. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the Saturday meeting and tour, which I would do. So I can't comment specifically on what the building itself looks like and the issues. In the paper, I certainly have read quite a bit of proposed students standpoint, as well as some of the faculty. So I think that's a huge issue. Clearly, I don't know what building a vocational school versus a regular high school in terms of the infrastructure required, what lives in the school equipment, and is that part of the cost? And does that help explain the significant difference? So I think that those are some of my concerns. The other issue is, for instance, I know we always think about ourselves and Parker, like, what are we getting for our money? And I think that's a human nature issue. But as of, I think, October of 2023, Whittier received a grant for about just shy of $82,000 to educate adults for vocational and learning. So it doesn't just do serve our young student population, it also serves our adult population. In terms of people who are asking about college and how many people go off to college, I compared report compared to April. So I will give you a couple of figures. April had, in terms of actual government report, had 65% of people over the age of 25 have at least a college degree, if not more, as compared to April, which is 30%. So clearly there is a higher educational achievement in Newport as compared, and that would also indicate median income for Newport family home is about 140, just shy of 120,000 versus 80,000 in April. So there are economic disparities. The other issue is Newport is about 93+% higher hallway, where April is about 70%. So I think our vote is also not just about ourselves, but it's about our community at large. And I really hope, I don't think it will be the system, but I certainly love knowing that I have a qualified person, creative person, when my heat is working, or my toilet is backed up. And I think, we don't support our local community on all levels, even if we don't have a direct best interest. I think it's being very short-sighted. And it's not good in my pocket, but I think it's right to do. And I think we're a little less than that today. We can't really make that determination, but I think that is very personal to us. So thank you for letting me hear my thoughts. And I hope that you can address some of the issues that were raised prior to the vote, which is important.
I just want to make sure I understand how votes work. So next week, we vote on whether or not they can spend money. But that is a majority vote of all future voters, what all towns. So theoretically, what would happen is April probably will vote for this. They're getting the best, they have the highest population. If everybody can vote yes, and all the rest of us no, they're over 50% is still voting. Right.
So can you pull up the last slide? That's what I was looking at when I had the slide about voter turnout. They were up to 28% of the vote in the last two elections.
Okay, so but still, they're the lion's share.
I would say, but if all the small towns vote on that over, I would argue against being fatalistic that our vote has no.
Okay, probably understood, but still.
Yeah. It's still a pretty big burden on Haverhill. I would caution against also assuming everybody in Haverhill is in favor. I mean, they are facing in, other school building projects. Yeah, yeah.
Because it does seem like they could basically force us to incur costs. Or be forcing us to incur costs that we can't take it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I'm trying to.
Okay, thanks. I mean, if people want to keep going, I don't want to hold you too long. It seems like there's a question. Under 10 minutes or? Yeah, have any of you changed your mind about the decision? Okay. Okay.
Steve Pucci again, Stewart Street. I'm happy to look at the new Pentucket. The high school looks great. Everybody, a lot of people in the town are very much in favor of it. It's outrageous to me that Whittier, 2 miles from here, there's nobody from Whittier at this meeting tonight to explain the details to us, to get into some of the information you don't have, we don't have. It's outrageous to me. On a no vote, can I vote tonight?
No, we have to wait. There's no write-in voting, you know, it's all arranged. Yes, I'm sorry. So the conditions around the vote next week, how it's 1 day from 11 to 7, and that there's no write-in voting, no extended hours. That's by statute. Whittier had the option of having each town vote independently or doing this vote, and it shows this and the conditions that are defined by statute. Yes. Jean, do you have a question? Jean Lambert, do you have a question?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, thank you. I have read in the Daily News and have heard that the chief or one of the strongest voices in the yes category here is the contractor himself, that he has been strongly on the yes as one would expect. And it seems like, as I've listened to speakers tonight, that a no vote it wouldn't necessarily cancel any sort of school, but it would allow us to come up with a more thoughtful procedure for all the towns that would suffer under this great burden of the debt. And that's what I wanted to confirm, that one of the chief forces on the yes vote is the construction manager himself or his group.
Yeah, so, okay.
So, one of the requirements with forming a campaign is that you have to file campaign finance reports. The only campaign finance reports that have been so far submitted and contributions that have been made in physical donations is from, I believe it's Union out of Pickering, and it's $5,000 so far to the pro, the for campaign, as it were. But that's as of January 6th. So that we don't know other contributions that have been made since then. And there are costs that have been incurred by the pro campaign, about $25,000 so far, in consulting and other things. So those are building payers that are standing.
Yeah, and it has been reported in multiple newspapers that Pennsylvania is the funding department of that. Thanks, Jen.
Steve Sarkisian, 602 Main Street, and my question revolves around the athletic fields. The redoing of the turf for 1.7 million just recently, is that going to be destroyed or not used in the new baseball fields, the new fields, the new stadiums?
You know, that only stadium, that was the, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
so the stadium is remaining, and that the stadium is remaining, the football stadium, and that's the turf replacement that was done. So that will not be disturbed.
I'm sorry, thank you.
You are.
I'm Mark Madden, 50 South Street. I want to thank you guys very much for taking the time to pull this together and provide such a comprehensive overview. I have two questions. One is, are we going to hear from, and I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but are we going to hear from the select board as to the select board's view of this project before the vote? And are we going to hear from the finance committee's recommendation with respect to the vote? That's one question. The second is the finance committee going to present, a financial plan if the vote is successful? Is there going to be some presentation made about how this might be funded? Asks, I think it would be helpful for people to understand what sort of those like. At the Newburyport presentation, we're put up a debt service illustration, which is very helpful. It sort of gave a sense of what the debt service burden would be on taxpayer over time, were this to be a debt exclusion in Newburyport. And it showed that without it, debt service in brought over 20 into the next 20 years, and with it, play out for the next 30. It'd be interesting to see that kind of illustration for us as voters for Newburyport's debt service, because we obviously had debt incurred for the individual people. And we're going to be working through that for decades. What will this do over what period of time? Thank you very much.
Okay. So as to the first question, the select board does not plan to take a vote on this because it's not something that the board would vote on. I mean, we are residents, we have our own opinions. I'm happy to share mine, but there's not a formal voting. Rod, do you want to speak to the thing?
Sure. So Mark asked two questions that mentioned the FinCom. First thing is that we've met, by the way, we've been following this closely as long as it's presented to us, which hasn't been a long time. Fortunately, we have a town manager who pulled together reams of information such as what's available in a select board that works very closely with him, and both the select board and the town manager have done a wonderful job pulling together what they could. And the most difficult situation to go through because the information you expect to have in front of you isn't there. And presentations have all been dog and bone, which is insulting. Our vote at the FinCom on the ballot question, 0 in favor, 3 against, 1 abstention. As to our second question, we most certainly will work with the town manager and the select board, as we always do, to try and figure out how this impacts us. It will impact us. We may be able to afford it better than other companies. There's no such thing as an expenditure that doesn't take with other expenditures. We have a lot of issues that are coming up in front of us, some that we haven't even begun to talk about. So this is not going to be easy to absorb. But again, fortunately, an incredible town manager, town accountant, select board will get through this as best we can, whatever it is. Personally, I believe the no vote will force them to deal with the situation the way they should have dealt with this starting 7 years ago. And the result could be, in fact, new agreements. We don't know. Sometimes you gotta take the course of action. It's a risk. It might be of the most benefit to all of us long term. And by the way, there are, as far as I can gauge, it goes with someone who wanted about showing up in the polls and maybe having so much power. If 10 communities are really aghast at the dollar cost, want to start over again. If you added up all the other percentages other than Haiti, we're just talking about 70% of the voters. So
we're not the only ones reacting this way, those of us that feel strongly about the situation. And so that's one thing that we keep in mind, is the conversations outside of Hayward, from administrative to field and finance, has been, I think, slightly negative, or perhaps greatly. It's been greatly. So that's our piece. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Bob Belmont, 5 Robin Road. One just question to our representative. Tonight, is there a school committee meeting for Whittier?
Where is it?
There is tonight. No, not tonight. I'm a strong supporter of the vocational education, and I don't think we could do better for having that. But thinking about, there was no school committee, thinking about Superintendent Maureen Lynch supervising the education of over 1,200 students in the adult education program, and possibly a $400 million project. I wish she was here, given the fact that I realized when I went to their budget, she's making over $210,000 plus benefits per year. Not getting into that. I'm thinking about the students that couldn't go because of the admissions process. And it's been a long-standing focus on that admissions process, whether it's fair. And I also worry about those students, if 3 got in and 9 applied, where did the other 9 go? And were they able to provide an appropriate education in our Kentucky regional schools? Now, let me just get to what I was trying to figure out in mathematics. If the project or with West Newbury is going to be for 16.2 million over 30 years. So if you look at the 16.2 million and you divide that over 30 years, I think the number is coming in at 540,000 a year. You divide that by the 13 students that we have, and that is roughly $41,568 and 39 cents. In addition to, because the per pupil cost every year is $21,631. Doing the math quickly for that student, that's just for the project, was 41,000 times the 4 years that they're going to get leave. It's going to cost roughly $966,000, not including the per pupil cost. But anyways, final thoughts. I would like for us to learn more about the opportunities for those 9 students or other students who weren't able to go to Whittier and how they're being educated through either going to Pentucket or possibly going to other locations. But also, most importantly, to relook at the admissions process that is built on and has been challenged back as far back as 2015, including some people that may have been on the school board at that time. So, some thoughts.
Thank you.
I think the first thing to say is I want to thank Wendy very much. She's the one who pulled this presentation together. She makes it look simple, but thousands of pages of documents have been thrown at us in the past few weeks, and she distilled it down with a brilliant presentation. So, Jen, I don't like speaking, and I'm hard to believe. So I wrote down my thoughts and I remarked about during the meeting. Just a couple of quick comments, and then I'll read it quick. When MSBA gives town money, it's based on a couple of things. Items that can be compensated or not. As they said, demolition does and fields don't. It also is a component for the community welfare. So when they built the Whittier Tech School, which I went to look at in 2016 because we were interviewing the superintendents at the time, the state paid for the whole thing because they're well connected as well. So I have to assume, this is an assumption within the Whittier district, it's a compilation of the wealth the district has, which determines our percentage they pay. I think for Kentucky it was 42 or 44%, it wasn't 50. If we'd done the project, 15 and 17 years prior, it was like 52%. That was the cost that we lose over time. It's that issue. Another issue that sort of bothers me a little. Everybody keeps saying, well, it's $280 a house. Somebody online posted said the cost of a pizza a week, or whatever it is. It's not. It's $16 million. And it's that lost opportunity of what West Newbury could do over time with that $16 million. So to diminish it down, to what's it going to cost per day or per minute, it's not really fair reason. To keep the big picture in mind. Now I'll run through my quick state. So over the last few months, we've seen tons of information. We visited Whittier just this past Saturday, had many conversations on the whole VOTEC project. We've seen tons of numbers, charts again tonight, and details. Everybody's trying to decide if it's a good idea or a terrible idea with a different perspective. But a lot of the conversation up until tonight, in my opinion, that twisted and distorted, it's really misdirected the focus away from the issue. I think we're all gonna agree, and I heard it tonight pretty clear, that we're all in favor of vocational education. Whittier does put out a great product, the students they put out. So this conversation cannot be and should not be mandate about vocational education. As a select board, as voters, we all have to be responsible with our tax dollars. And our town, our finance director, Angus, they work magnificently to fund all the projects and our budgets, and they do a beautiful job. So what's happened is the whole conversation really comes down to dollars, the money, and economics. It's unfortunate, that's the reality, it's that simple. Because if the state will offer us, say, 50% reimbursement on this, the conversation will be a lot easier. And I suspect that if the project were at a much lower number, there'd be a lot less resistance. I also suspect that if the formula that Whittier uses to assess the towns were more equitable, the conversation would have a lot less resistance. So again, West Newbury just has so many demands on the money that when the money goes to this project, there are going to be other projects that won't get funded. On the select board, we see them coming all the time. We're looking at well, water. You haven't even seen at Hackett's budget. That's definitely coming too. And West Newbury likes to purchase open space and land. So there's this balance. So I guess I'll get to the crux. Personally, I feel the cost of the project is much more than district communities can afford. I'm not just talking West Newbury. We sat through the meeting in Newbury before, and some of these communities are going to be devastated. They have to come up with their shares for this project. So I would prefer to take a step back with a smaller, more affordable building project. That was number one. And I would also suggest, before we move forward again, we have to modify the mutual agreement. So that it's equitable to all the communities in the district. Now, the select board actually sent this a letter very similar stating that a number of other issues. We sent it to Whittier, MSBA, to all the towns. We got a less desirable response from Whittier, believe it at that. So that's still a process. I think we have to. That's my personal opinion. I'm going to be voting no. I don't think it's wise to spend this kind of money on this project. I think we could do better. And Tucker went through the same issue. We're going to build a fancy building in America at one point. It's going to be $54 million or something to that effect. People were panicked over it. It wasn't. It was overbuilt, huge field house. He got voted down soundly. We came back 15 to 17 years later. It was more money. It was at the right time. It was the right project. That's what we built. I think that's what we has to do. So I wrap up with the good news. That's that we all have a say in deciding this issue. I'll get one vote. Get out there on Tuesday, maybe count.
I also want to thank Wendy. This was, I would say, extremely objective, factual material that you provided to give everybody an opportunity to make decisions. I would say it's no, let's say, surprise, maybe not surprise, but I think crux of the issue. There's two things. One is the communication from the outset has been lacking. I've acknowledged my part of that already, that I think when, especially if we're used to communicating out to the constituency, that we certainly did not do enough of a good job from a school committee perspective. I can't speak to the superintendent, but I just think there should have been better outreach, and that is water under the bridge. I think, you know, the cost of the school, there's difference of opinions on those. I think we probably all acknowledge, so that if we go back to the beginning of the line, that those costs are just going to go up considerably. So that's something to bear in mind. It's something that I, you know, as a taxpayer, struggle with a little bit too. And I think, you know, whether it gets passed or not, there are things that really have to happen immediately at the building. And, you know, some maintenance is going to have to be done. And I would just say, my experience with the school began since 2018. What they do to keep that building running in its current state is nothing short of miraculous, in my opinion, despite all the problems. There's going to have to be expense to keep that school running. And those are all going to be some costs. We go back, so we're going to spend, I believe, $130 million for the $350 million number. Money is going to be spent that if a new school ever does come around, we'll never get back. So, you know, part of the decision to go with the school across the board, including the state, was that, you know, that's basically just throwaway money, right? So, you know, from my perspective, investing in the school, you know, there's no debate, I think, on the cost. It's a pretty, very significant cost. Certainly burden on all the towns and communities. You know, there is risk, and, you know, I'm not trying to be threatening, but we, you know, aren't able to maintain the building. And I think what you touched on is right, that once we spend a certain amount to do certain number of renovations, that kicks in all the ADA compliance and all these other things that we have no ability but to spend the rest of that money. That's going to be a burden on all the taxpayers. So for me, it comes down to the decision as to do I want to essentially throw away or do I want to invest in it. You know, under options between now and when the, you know, when the ground breaks to reduce the cost of so far. I don't know if I'm an expert in the space at all. But I would just say I think the long haul and the school is the way to go. I would say if we go, you know, if it doesn't pass. This started in 2015, so it's almost 10 years ago. It's in all likelihood, and there's, you know, million schools that are school districts that are from the state that, you know, are also wanting to us and others. So, you know, it really comes down to whether we want to invest in that, whether we can. And I really quickly understand both sides of the story. So I appreciate the time. I apologize for the answers. I apologize if I did not do a good enough job of ensuring better health outreach and communication with the board and change going forward.
Well, I'm not going to be nearly as long as this. I quite honestly, I'm still up in the air. I am, I'm sort of furious with the way that Whittier administration's handled this. But I don't think my decision or anybody's decision should be based on emotion here. And how you feel about particular people within a particular organization. We have a financial decision. We have a responsibility decision to not just kids who will be going to Whittier next year or 10 years from now. We have a responsibility to a much farther looking future. You know, the kids that are going to be students at Whittier in the next 5 years, the people who are going to be converting their homes and their businesses so that they need to decarbonize it basically, so that they are net zero, so that our kids and our grandkids have a world they can live in. And we're really depending upon that for that, but we should be. On the other hand, it's a lot of money, and just looking beyond, you know, West Newbury is will probably be the least impacted, aside from Havel. And I can't really speak to them, so I don't know the real, I don't know that each individual economic situation of everybody who lives in Havel, but we're probably the least impacted of any of the communities. And probably, perhaps the most able to accept the additional burden. But it's still a lot of money. We put money into rehabilitating the existing structure. It's probably good money after that. We don't take advantage of today's cost, tomorrow's cost might be much higher. Maybe we come up with a much better design than. I'm not saying anything conclusive here, because I really still can't make up my mind. There's a lot to balance. You know, I definitely before next Tuesday, I'll make up my mind, but, so, sorry, well, that's the truth.
Ian, did you have another question? We're closing up the conversation here. Okay. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate your engagement with this and your input.